Hello and welcome to the Marketing Through a Pandemic panel discussion. We're doing this virtually for the Canadian Brewing Awards Conference. My name is Joe Weed, the Thirsty Writer. I'm here in Victoria, BC. We're recording this in early August. On a beautiful sunny day where I am, but we've got people from all across the country, so we'll see what it's like wherever they're coming from. So I'm just going to do some quick intros before we get started. I'll go alphabetically. First on my list is Ken Beattie is the executive director of the BC Craft Brewers Guild. Ken's passion for beer began in 1987 when he was hired as a summer student at a brewery. He spent the next 30 years working in the beer community at a couple of different breweries. And then in 2013, he became the executive director of the BC Craft Brewers Guild. He's the co-founder of the BC Ale Trail. He's a faculty member of the Kwantlen Polytechnic University Brewing and Brewing Operations program, and he sits on the board of the Canadian Craft Brewers Association. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Joe.
And Cass Enright is a craft beer entrepreneur. He's the founder of the Bar Towel, Ontario's first online beer community, the Brewer's Backyard, a craft beer festival series in Toronto and Ottawa, and a founding director of Toronto Beer Week. Most recently, Cass created the Ontario Beer Delivery Index, the leading website tracking home beer delivery options to help Ontario's brewing industry during the pandemic, and Cellar Diving, a virtual beer conversation series featuring leading international brewing personalities. Thanks for joining us, Cass.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Then we've got Jason Fisher, owner-operator of the Indie Alehouse Brewery and Brew Pub in the West End of Toronto. Jason got his start homebrewing at age 16. Cleverly, he did a grade 10 science project called The Life Cycle of Yeast as a cover for brewing beer as a school project. Smart man. He homebrewed for a long time, eventually turned his hobby into opening his own brewery, and the Indie Ale House now has 3 operating locations, including a production facility and a small on-site brew pub inside Italy, Toronto. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brian Titus, President and General Manager of Garrison Brewing Company in Halifax. Prior to starting Garrison, Brian served for 10 years as a Naval Clearance Diving Officer in the Canadian Forces. Garrison was founded in 1997 and has been growing ever since. He also produces a line of craft soda under the name Dockyard Soda Co. and a collaboration cider with local maker Bulwark. He's the co-founder of Halifax Seaport Cider and Beer Fest, an annual waterfront gathering held each August. Well, we'll have to find out if it's happening. I doubt it. Now in its 4th year. Welcome, Brian.
Cheers, thanks.
And then we have Frederick Trompe, who founded Microbrasserie Charlevoix in 1998 with his partner Caroline. He literally fell in love with the history and making of beer and founded the brewery in 1998, as I mentioned. He also has been involved with the Association of Microbreweries of Quebec, where he was chairman from 2012 to 2017. He still sits on the board and is now co-chairman of the brand new Canadian Craft Brewers Association, which was created last year. Well, Fred.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody. We have a lot of topics to cover, so I don't want to spend too much time, but I thought I would give each of you an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about what it's been like over the last few months in your various regions, to talk about how breweries have reacted, like in a general sense, just a quick overview, and maybe we'll note some differences between regions about what governments have been allowing breweries to do, etc. So why don't we start out on the East Coast with Halifax with Brian.
Yeah, let's start off with the best coast here. So I guess it could have been worse. It could always have been worse, right? But in general, I think we're weathering it pretty good as an industry. I guess it kind of depends a little bit what the mix is. Will determine what the impact is. So if you're a new brewery, you're heavily indebted. You don't really do much packaging. This has probably been a real struggle. Tap rooms shut down, 15th of March. I think that's pretty similar across the country. I know for Garrison, we immediately had 2 very busy tap rooms shut down and about 200 draft accounts. And so it kind of just felt like we were stepping off a cliff. But later that same week, we saw a 40% jump in liquor store orders, and then the same thing the following Monday, and the same thing the following Monday. So, we're lucky. We're in 7 provinces. We're package heavy. We're probably 65% package, and so it doesn't make up for the drop that we had, but it definitely cushioned the blow. We're lucky the NSLC never shut down. They restricted in a major way. They closed Sundays. They shut down at 6 o'clock every night. They limited, to initially 5 people in store, eventually 10 people. So there's some pretty crazy lineups outside of NSLC stores. People going in single file. And so I think a lot of the small breweries, anybody who had a retail outlet actually did pretty good, because all of a sudden people said, well, why am I walking past this, this local brewery that's got a great retail store, and why am I standing in line at the NSLC? Why don't I just stop in? So we saw a lot of new customers. Our retail outlets tripled, and they actually haven't dropped back. And so I think we've held on to a bunch of new folks. So that's a little bit of encouragement coming out of this.
Ryan, do you know the other maritime provinces, if they're similar? Do they have a similar situation, or do they have different liquor store systems or anything like that?
Yeah, all 4 provinces have their own systems, and they all did slightly different things. PEI shut down completely. The PEILC and Newfoundland closed up largely for a period of time. Ultimately, so the breweries in PEI actually had a bit of free reign for a little while when the liquor stores were closed and they were open. So they were feeling pretty good about that. New Brunswick never actually shut down. It did similar to Nova Scotia, just kind of reduced hours and that kind of thing. So right now they're all everybody's open. For the most part, they're back to normal hours. NSLC just went back to Sundays being open, and later hours than that in the last week or so. But yeah, no, I think it's gone pretty good. There's a lot of expectation about this is going to hit breweries hard. Is there going to be a fallout, that kind of thing. To be honest, the only one in Nova Scotia that won't be reopening, sadly, is a pioneer, and that's Granite Brewery. But it's really that's more retirement, long time in the coming. God's sake, that guy's been sort of waving the flag and pushing this thing up the hill for since 1985. So he deserves a comfortable retirement after all this. So.
Fred, how about Quebec? What are things like there? I know you mentioned earlier off camera that it's a lot different between the cities and the smaller communities.
Yeah, well, when the shutdown happened, at the end of March, I would say in Quebec, maybe 30 to 40% of the craft beer sales are in pubs and restaurants. And so for us, when all the restaurants and bars were closed, so it was a loss of sale for all of the small brewers. And obviously, it was not really easy. As you know, the beers are sold in stores and not at the government retail SAQ. So, but it was so hard to get in the stores. People were so nervous that they were not actually doing what they do usually with craft beer, and take a bottle or a can and read the history of the beer. So everybody was really quick to go to the store, take a 6-pack or a 12-pack of major breweries. So we had a little decline there. And after that, again, 50% of the craft brewers in Quebec use bottles, as opposed to the rest of Canada, who's everybody's in can now. So for us, it was really hard when, and they're supposed to be recycled and everything, and the government said to stop recycled bottles or take back bottles at the stores because of the danger of propagation of the virus. So we ended up having almost a shortage in bottles, and the stores didn't even want to buy from breweries that were bottling. So the can market really increased, and we're going to talk maybe a little later about marketing, but we could see that those breweries who were using cans ended up having a better time than everybody that was in bottle. But since the reopening in June 15, that's where the terrace, the restaurant reopened. It went really crazy in the small region. everybody from the big cities, especially Montreal, just decided to leave Montreal and go in the little region. So now you see Gaspésie, Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Charlevoix, where I am. It is a real mess. You should see the streets. They're jam-packed with people, and it's very good for us. But at the same time, when we talk with our friends in Montreal and some areas of Quebec, it's really sad to see that they have 5 customers per day. So we'll see what happens next. I think the virus is pretty well maintained, or what's the term? What's the word? Contained.
Contained.
Yeah, it's pretty well contained now. So we just hope people are gonna go back to the large cities and go in the brew pubs and the breweries a little more, so that we don't see too much closures.
All right, thanks. All right, now we're into Toronto. I don't know who wants to go first, Cass or Jason. Who wants to take the lead on that one?
Okay, well, Jay and I can tag team this because him and I have actually been speaking a lot about this over the last couple months, because we both, Joe, you mentioned this off the top, we did this Zoom series right in the heart of the pandemic, April, May, with a whole bunch of brewers from Toronto and outside of Ontario, from and around Ontario and even outside of Ontario, just to get a sense of what everybody was feeling. And a lot of the breweries were doing okay, as has been mentioned, because they were able to pivot pretty well to replace their bar sales with at-home sales. In Ontario, at-home ordering and delivery online was something that we already had in place, and then breweries just sort of went all into that. And Jay can speak to it more, but a lot of breweries in Ontario have really weathered the storm pretty nicely because of the online sales that they've been able to do. So basically redeploying their bar sales keg delivery staff to drive beers to consumers' homes. So that's been great for them. But, speaking more broadly in the beer industry, the bars and restaurants were the ones that have really suffered. And I think we've seen some of those effects like Fred has in the bigger cities here. There was a restaurant that went from 80 staff to 2, and if you multiply that by all the big restaurants that we have in Toronto, that was devastating. So, but, we'll get into government supports. There was some pretty interesting government changes that happened during the pandemic that I never thought I would see in my lifetime that occurred in Ontario. Credit where credit's due to try to help revitalize the alcohol producers and sellers here, and we'll get into that more, but that's helped as well. So right now Toronto is getting open again. I think we're probably seeing some of what Fred is, pretty quiet in the really dense areas, and a lot of people fleeing to go to the rural regions, which is causing its own set of issues, but I think a lot of the breweries have done okay.
Yeah, for sure. The sessions we did, the Zoom sessions, were in part, as Cass said, to kind of find out what everything was going on, but a little bit of commiserating. It was the early 4 weeks when the government was saying a lot of nice things, but not really doing anything. That was the terrifying part for us. And I think for some of the smaller breweries, the pivot is a little harder. We made most of our money by people walking into the Indie Ale House and sitting down and having a beer. Our account sales is pretty minimal compared to that. But we did have a bottle shop. We had just started to put stuff into cans, and we had 2 LCBO SKUs releasing in late March. And then this happened, and the LCBO changed the rules. So, the OCB and a few other entities were helpful in kind of getting that corrected. It was harder at the start because of the unknown factor. And then when some of the government programs came in and started to actually help in end of April and May, we still had the kind of sense that we're going to live a little longer, but we don't know when this is going to end. And so now we're nearer the end than the beginning, we hope. We're starting to be able to have strategic plans again, because there was no sense in making a plan in March, April, or May, because you couldn't have 3 days line of sight. Some of the larger breweries who had lots of stock of can were able to just drive it to people's homes. For the smaller ones like us, that took a little bit of time to do, but I think, Cass can correct me, but we were the second brewery in Ontario to say, we're going to do home delivery for a flat rate in a certain zone or for free in a certain zone. And now there's, 150 breweries doing it. So we were happy to pivot to that quickly. And it is a substantial line of income for us. All the breweries I talk to say, we really want this to continue because dealing with counts is its own challenge. Dealing directly with the customer has a lot of benefits. But figuring this out, getting an opportunity to figure this out, having some of those rules change quickly, it's going to be a new world when this gets going.
Well, Ken, you want to tell everybody what's been going on here in BC?
Yeah, similar story, certainly. People pivoted. We had a bit of a different situation. We realized the hospitality industry, we kind of out here, we already have in place a government sanctioned, asked to form by the government, a business technical advisory panel called the BTAP panel, and it's cross-sectional, so it has wine, spirits, distilleries, ciders, everybody in the industry works together with the government. We did some recommendations. So that panel, which is 9, worked as a consolidated effort to deal with not only breweries' needs, but also the industry needs or the hospitality needs. So we were able to kind of leverage things that were working for everyone because we all agreed that we were closed first. We guaranteed we'd be probably closed the longest because of our setup, and we'd be the slowest to recover with people coming back in. So people pivoted very quickly to online services, like you guys have said. Fortunately, I guess in Vancouver at least, a lot of the breweries aren't located right downtown. They're in Vancouver, but they're in the suburbs. They can't be located downtown. It's a bit different than Victoria, which has breweries right in the downtown. I mean, it's the core of the city. So a bit different of a story for Victoria, but a number of those breweries are the older breweries, Phillips, and they're, to Brian's point, well established. Their mix is much higher in cans and distribution already, so the tasting room wasn't really affected. We also worked with the Restaurant and Pub Association really closely and was on multiple calls to just not only figure out a strategy for the government, but also figure out moving forward how we would work as a group to leverage that power of the amount of jobs that were there. And we had a direct line already to the Attorney General who looks after the liquor file because of this BTAP. So we were in a fortunate position where, to Kaz's point and others' points, we've done things in the government. The government's done things for us that I am astonished with. Things that would have taken 3 years are done. We had an example of allowing the restaurants and pubs to deliver takeout, and we added beer, wine, and spirits to the takeout delivery. That happened in 72 hours. It was amazing. We talked about it on a Friday. I was on a call Saturday, a call Sunday, and they announced it on Monday. Unheard of. So I'm amazed by the tenacity, and sounds like it's a common story across the country of people being able to pivot. The canning line business, the mobile canning line business went through the roof because some people weren't set up for that. That I think will be a legacy that people realize, no, I can't just maybe have the model that I did. So yeah, there is silver linings. We've had a couple of breweries close, but they've both been bought within a week. So, and we've had, I think it's 9 breweries have opened, and 5 of those breweries have opened during COVID, which is an amazing show of faith. But because of kind of the setup to everyone else is that we also, we'll talk about it when we talk about marketing, but we also established a manufacturers program called Time to Buy British Columbia, but I'll get into that a bit later.
It sounds like there are some commonalities between regions, but also some differences. Like in some places, liquor stores actually closed, which was surprising for me to hear. And of course, each province has a different setup. Like we have a government system here as well as a private liquor store system, in addition to breweries being able to sell their own packaged product. So maybe not all universalities, but lots of interesting things to compare to for sure. I guess maybe this is a tough question to ask, but what do you guys think in terms of what governments, what your provincial governments were able to do? What were maybe the best things they were done, or are there still things you want your governments to do? Is this something that we can explore a little bit? Why don't we start? Start again on the East Coast, since we?
Well, so there wasn't actually too much done by the provincial government that was applicable, well, to us as Garrison. I think they looked at it more as what can we do to supplement what the federal government is doing. So they tended to be smaller aid packages, for smaller business, self-employed individuals, that kind of thing, and a little bit less for established, production companies like ourselves. We are looking at, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to apply to the wage subsidy program for April. As nice as it was to have a bunch of ramped up package sales for the first couple of weeks when this shut down, eventually people have enough toilet paper and they have enough beer, and they just, they're not panic buying anymore. And we just saw the bottom drop. So it was like a roller coaster. We felt like maybe this isn't going to be so bad. We ended up actually a couple percent up in March, and then 40%, about 42% down in April. So the upside of that, I guess, is that we'll probably be able to get the subsidy for a couple of months there. The crazy thing, we talk about things that governments did that were positive so quickly. Right in the middle of the pandemic, the NSLC launched a new local policy in Nova Scotia, which essentially included Labatt as a local producer and qualifying for a markup reduction and some other benefits that come with being a local craft producer. It's pretty sickening. To their credit, it wasn't negotiated and agreed upon during the pandemic. It was just really, really crappy timing. And it was done kind of behind closed doors in February, and they just decided they couldn't sit on it any longer. So it came out in April. Anyways, the government's been pretty good. The one thing they really did that helped me out personally is the premier got up one day and on a Friday and said, he was quite pissed. He wasn't seeing the right responses happening from people on the street, and he said, just stay the blazes home. And he got all angry and real sort of down home East Coasty kind of way. And of course, that stuck with a number of people. We started seeing social media light up. And on Sunday, I woke up and thought, wouldn't that be a neat name for a beer? And then on Monday, I pitched it to the team. And then on Tuesday, we had the labels being printed. And then on Wednesday, we were canning. And on Thursday, when we went on sale, we'd already sold out. So it was a bit insane. So you talk about pivoting. We were doing home delivery, and we were doing about 15 deliveries a day, maybe 25 on a Friday. And that weekend we did over 500. So, every man, woman, and dog, that had a car was put into service and given a list of deliveries. And it was a bit insane. And actually, we just cut the final charity check for that. It was $28,000. So, it was amazing for us. It sent all the right signals in terms of just stay at home. Initially, you could only get it through home delivery to really sort of bring that point home. And we raised some money, so that was all good. But lots of challenges too.
Thanks. Yeah, good story. Fred, is there anything in Quebec that you'd like the government to do differently, or is there an issue they have?
I was listening to you guys, and I was jealous because unfortunately the government of Quebec didn't do a lot alcohol-wise. We had programs for all the businesses and everything, but we the MBQ, we pitched them. We wanted to have online sales. It's illegal. Home delivery, it's illegal. They didn't do anything. And, one of the reasons I think for that is when they closed all the businesses, they considered, and we were really happy to be considered an essential business. So we could keep on brewing and working in our breweries. And the feedback I have is most of the time when we were asking them to allow breweries to do, to do different things and like home or just a pickup, beer pickup and stuff like that. They were always, okay, you're lucky enough to be an essential business. So unfortunately, most of the things you guys were talking about that you waited 30 years to achieve, or 5 years, and you couldn't believe you saw of your living, well, I'm still waiting for that. And I'm not sure I'm going to see that. I'm really, really disappointed. The Régie des Alcools here, the board is so strong. They do whatever they want, and everything has to come from a new law that is voted. Otherwise, they don't want to change anything, and they didn't do a lot during COVID either. So that's sad, and we're still working. We're really working really hard with the MBQ, but there's no answer at the other side of the phone.
That's really too bad to hear.
Yeah.
How about from Ontario? Any perspectives there on government involvement?
Yeah, so I think particularly in Toronto and in the craft beer community, our current political government isn't the most popular, but I think they got an awful lot of credit for reacting quickly and keeping things very simple. Stay home, support local, don't go out if you're sick. And they kind of, listened to experts and did a pretty good job. They made some pretty quick decisions on allowing, off sales at restaurants, allowing, a version of cross sale. There are some weirdnesses to the laws. You have to sell food with a bottle of wine and with a bag of, with a bottle of beer, sell a bag of chips and things like that. And that's fine. I think they recognized there was going to be a major hurt on the restaurant industry in Toronto, and allowing them to stay open somehow through takeout and curbside pickup and changing some of those rules was a lifeline in the early days when we didn't know what was going to happen. So they reacted pretty quickly and got pretty good marks for that, I think, across the board. I wish we could turn things around as fast as Brian did. That's a great story. We brewed a beer called Stay Home, and it was a fundraiser for our staff because we went from 64 staff to 10. So it was $1 from the cans, and we sold that pretty quickly, and we're lucky we had a batch in the tank that was just ready to go.
Exactly.
But we can't turn a label, print, and can around in nearly the time you can. So very nice. That took us 2-3 weeks. But we probably have $500 to $600 for every staff member who was forced to be laid off. So we'll have that as soon as the subsidies end, so that it doesn't kick them out of that. And we're thinking of other ways to do that. We had ways for when you purchased online to leave a tip for the staff who've been laid off, and we collected a lot of money that way. So the government, by just kind of getting out of the way, which is all we've ever really asked, has helped a lot. There's an awful lot more they could do, and I think the fact that they allowed this to happen and society didn't unravel should be an argument on our side for modernizing the liquor laws in Ontario. The laws in Ontario were written by Molson and Labatt's, so it's going to be a fight, but that's what we do. Small brewers are good at this fight. We have some data now and the public. So, I think there'll be more to come. The pandemic forced the timeline to be very realistic, as opposed to let's think about it for 6 months. So hopefully we can get things done. One thing they did say was this off sale model. Right away they said we're going to let this go right to the end of December, even if the pandemic lasts less than that. We're going to let this go to the end of the year. So that was a kind of a broad view of hopefully signaling the intent to make some changes long term.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more effusive than Jay was about the change to the off sales, which is something that we've been talking about for my entire drinking life and never happened. And then on a conference call with the ministry that I was on, she just said, this change is coming on Friday. And it allowed all bars to sell sealed containers of alcohol out their front door or deliver it, which immediately made beer bars e-commerce sites to sell their stock. And there was nothing, at least in writing, against doing growler fills. So bars started to be able to do that too, which is insane because we never thought that was going to happen. And so, obviously there's a lot of big picture rules that we want changed, but like Jay said, that was a big lifeline to a lot of the craft beer establishments in the city that just had to close and their revenue went down to zero. And this allowed them to get going again. And like Milos's, which is an awesome place in London, he's such a great character and personality. It like rejuvenated his business because he started doing food and beer deals and stuff that we never used to be able to do. So that was great. Then I'll also shout out the licensing body in Ontario, the AGCO, which when it became clear when summertime hit that patio was going to be the only way that bars and restaurants were and tap rooms were going to make any money, they eliminated all need to apply for extended licensing, and then the cities complied, and now we have patios on sidewalks and in parking lots and stuff that would never have happened because of just the red tape that's inherent to the Canadian, alcohol system. So, there have been some things that, that were done that were very positive, and like Jay said, society hasn't unraveled yet, and hopefully these are things that can remain permanent, because it certainly doesn't look like the pandemic is going away on December 31st at midnight when the laws expire.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same situation out here in BC, right, Ken? We've got patios, breweries with patios allowing them to expand, and breweries able to add patios to parking lots and street spaces and things like that. Restaurants doing the same. What else have we been doing out here? Let's think.
Yeah, it's in all due respect to my colleague in Quebec, we've had just honestly a fantastic response from the liquor board, the government, and the BC liquor board, the government stores. Probably the biggest change. We talked about the off sale. We also allowed growlers. That has always been the domain of our local brewers. The lifeblood of a small brewer is filling growlers, but the concession was to allow it to happen in order to get product out, so we didn't have all this spoiled product coming back. It worked well, but we changed it back. We said that we'd like it back on July 15th, which the government actually listened to, so it was a temporary measure, mainly because some of the restaurants were filling soup bowls, sippy cups, boots, whatever they could put in. So that wasn't really great quality for us, but it did solve an issue for us. The patios were massive. They finally allowed patios in a number of the municipalities. You're allowed to do it, but the municipality decides whether you can do it or not. So Vancouver has no patios unless you're food primary. I think the government, when they released it, between the restaurants, pubs, and breweries, they processed over 750 licenses in 3 weeks. So anyone who's ever applied for a patio probably takes 7 months, 10 months to get a patio, and they were turning them around in 48 hours. It was amazing work. They also allow third-party delivery. So out here we have breweries and wineries have warehouses where they keep the product outside of their hometown, and you're not able to deliver direct to consumer from that warehouse. So if you have a brewery in Vancouver, but you have a sales team in Kelowna, the sales rep would literally have to drive to Vancouver, pick up the product, and deliver it to the home consumer in Kelowna. Ridiculous. They moved that out of the way last week, temporarily. They did hospitality pricing out here, where the restaurants pay what we pay full retail at the liquor stores. A restaurant pays. They've been trying to do that for 50 years, I think. And the government finally has conceded that they will allow the discount, which works out to about 20% difference to the restaurants to buy product. So that's taken place. That's a temporary measure, but it will probably move back to wholesale plus 10% or something. And they've most recently allowed, which is also bizarre and, to me, but in things that people have asked for, we now have numerous municipalities that you're allowed to drink in public parks and on beaches. because Dr. Henry is wanting us outside and she wants us social distancing. And so the government, North Vancouver, where I live, was the first city to do it. Penticton was doing it. And now even Vancouver, which is notoriously the hardest market to change anything in, they've now allowed at least 4 plazas. They wanted 22. They had 22 parks allowed, and now they've streamlined it to 4 right away that are in plazas. So all those things we're hoping to keep around. Our relationship with the government and our relationship as an association with the liquor distribution branch of BC is done a 180. It's clear, concise, and collaborative, and I just hope that it stays. Because I think, like anything like these things, they realize when industry and manufacturers and government work together for the betterment of everyone, there's mutual benefits, and they get all the consolidation, all the collaboration out of the way. Oh, we got to reanalyze that and do another survey, and we got to ask this stakeholder. When they get all that out of the way, they get things done, and those things only benefit. It's allowed people to bring back staff, and it's going to add lots of tax dollars because we actually are able to spread out more people in the locations, which is increasing the revenue, which obviously results in tax for them. So, so far, I mean, we're in a government that teeters on. It is a minority government by 1 seat, and if I was John Horgan, I'd be calling an election today because he's really gone up in the polls because they've done a great job of managing it across the board. So, kudos to them.
So that's a good overview of kind of brewery relations with government. And what I want to do now is shift a bit towards the way we interact with consumers. I have a little anecdote. I was here in Victoria. There's a little brewery called Whistleboy Brewing that's in the bottom of Market Square, and there's a beer garden. They have a patio, and then they have another beer garden kind of across the square. So there's 2 big beer gardens in there. But I was talking to them, and they said that they were super busy. And then when our provincial health officer, Dr. Henry, as Ken mentioned her name, when she made an announcement before the long weekend saying everybody needs to be careful, their business just dropped, like just dead, basically. So it made me realize how much power the government has in the way they communicate with our consumers, but also, how are breweries communicating directly with consumers, trying to educate them, trying to get them to understand the situation. So, where should we start with this one? Why don't we start with Toronto again? You guys, how are you guys communicating with your consumers, and how is the government affecting that too with their communications?
Yeah, this is a particular sore point for me, so I won't say too much. I'll get into a lot of trouble. The government neither helped nor hurt with this. I think the kind of communication on COVID was great, and certainly we were happy for them to look after health and public safety before us. So then, when it came to communicating with the customers, as a kind of a general statement, the brewers in Ontario are not A+ at this. Let me leave it at that. And the association here has kind of even said, maybe not so outwardly, but has said their focus is on building the communication internally. I'm certainly not authorized to speak for the OCB. I am a very new member, but we have said our focus is on internal issues, not on educating and communicating with the public, which I think is a gap, but they have their hands full with their mission now. So there's an opportunity there. I think the person best communicating with the public right now is Cass through his beer delivery index. That was brand new for this and widely acclaimed and hugely popular for both consumers and for breweries. And I think it's a good example of what we need more of, whether it's educational websites on what is a style guideline and what is a hybrid and what is a collaboration, and because it's a little noisy in the market here in Ontario. So that's an area that we're pretty passionate about, but indie alehouse communication is different than industry communication. Our needs are, we're a tiny little brew pub with 140 seats. I don't need everybody in the province to know. I just need 140 people at a time to know about what we're doing. So I think, there's a layer that's missing, whether it's provincial or countrywide, that talks about communication and education and frankly, just advocacy. Shop local is great for people who can hear your voice, but still advocacy on interprovincial trade, or why it's crazy that you can't drink in a park in Ontario, but you can in Vancouver. Like, the society is going to unravel in Toronto if I have a beer in a park. Like, so there are some things to communicate that people want to hear and people will respond to. Very low hanging fruit, a pandemic aside, that we struggle with here. And I think, to be fair, the industry is relatively new in Ontario. We've had this boom. We're settling out a little bit. The vast majority of breweries in Ontario are less than 5 years old. There's a lot to learn. Even those of us who are 10 years old, there's a lot to learn. And we commonly look to Quebec and we look out west. What you guys have done is you've been around longer and you have more friendly governments historically until the pandemic. So I'm excited to hear what you guys do, but customer communication is a noisy mess. And that's probably as much as I should say to make it home safely.
Right. Cass, he gave you a big thumbs up for what you've been doing. You want to talk about that?
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. Thanks, Jay, for the shout out. So, yeah, I mean, what I did when this all started, I mean, I don't own a brewery. I never have. What I consider my job to be in the beer industry is like a concert promoter, right? I help everybody. I help, the saying goes, high tides float all boats. And so I like to raise the industry up. That's what I like to do. So when this first started, I quickly realized a lot of breweries were just sort of tweeting out their information about delivery, and we could do this, we could do that. It was just kind of all of a mess. So I just decided to aggregate it all together, and through the help of some really friendly beer lovers, we just put it into a great site. And it allows everybody to go to one place to at least find out the details of their local brewery when it comes to delivery. So that's gone really well. But since we're on the topic of communication, I'll just say a couple things, because I'm gonna tell people what they should be doing, and that is they should be communicating. They should be talking to their consumers. And this is a time where a lot of people have questions. A lot of people, they want to know what's happening with the breweries that they like. You have a lot of fans out there. Even small things, making sure that your website's updated with hours and times when you're closed, that your social profiles are updated with the latest information. You don't always have to communicate on every single issue that's out there, because pandemics are complicated. But I think it's not a good time to sort of shy away from at least talking about your business to the fans that you have, that want to know what you're up to, how everybody's doing, and how they can enjoy your beer, because a lot of people still want to do that. So, it's I created a site that was sort of a clearinghouse for beer delivery options, but I'd still encourage all breweries to make sure that through this time that they are visible, and the latest about themselves is out there for when people want to go looking for it.
Here. Fred, how about in Quebec? What's the story like there with communicating to your consumers?
Well, I would say the AMBQ did a pretty good job on that. First, when the pandemic started, we had some complaints from brewers saying you're not communicating enough with the consumers, and we were so busy, grabbing all the information needed to give to our brewers to make sure that everybody knew exactly how to deal with what was happening. But then after, when everything got a little quieter, we launched a new program. We even changed the name on our Facebook page, so it's not Association des Microbrasseries du Québec, which is really dealing towards brewers, not the public necessarily. And now we changed it to Bière de Micro du Québec. So now we do a lot of contests on our AMBQ, which is not AMBQ anymore. Now it's really targeting consumers. We also printed a map with all the 250 breweries in Quebec. It's free. It's everybody has it. Even the people that are not members of the association are on that map, and that's what we really focused on and saying during this summer. visit your local craft brewery in Quebec, and we have all those little kind of routes that you can go to visit all the breweries. And of course, besides that, every brewer, as Cass was saying, has to take care of its own stuff. But I think the MBQ did a pretty good job to turn around pretty quickly towards the consumer, because that's what we really felt that was needed for the moment. One of the other thing, maybe, I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, but I'm pretty happy with how the public responded so far. You know that in Quebec now, the mask is mandatory in all the public spaces, and to be honest, even on terrace, on patio, when it's a covered patio, it's considered like a closed place. So I was a little afraid of the reaction of the public, all those people that are against wearing a mask. But so far, so good. I've heard some, bad stories like you always have. But I think the communication from the government and from all the associations towards the public was well received, and people are respectful of all our workers, and it's very good to see.
Did you have to lift your mask to sip your beer? Is that the idea?
Yeah, well, you have to wear your mask until you're seated, and if you want to go to the restroom, you have to put it back. But no, we don't have to drink through the mask.
extra filtration, right? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, how about out in Halifax?
To Frederick's point there, the public's been pretty good with mask wearing. We're a very compliant lot here in Canada, and maybe particularly so out east. In fact, so I've got we have our Seaport location, and then we have a brewery tap room that we built back in November called the Oxford. It's an old theater that we repurposed part of it, and we've got a great big marquee sign out in front. So I've actually got hashtag masks are sexy to just try and have a bit of fun with it and get the point. Other than that's the can. So other than communicating fairly clearly, I think we've made our point on that. Basically every tool in the box, in terms of what do we do to get the word out. It's not all about us. The last thing people want is to be hit with sales and marketing in the middle of a pandemic. So one of the things we did was we created a contest that we ran for about 3 months, and every week we came up with a new prize pack, and it was called Sociable. Which is a common saying out east. When you raise a pint, everybody yells sociable. But the whole idea was to tie in businesses that were being affected by this pandemic. And we went out and we bought a whole pile of gift certificates, gift cards. And so every week somebody would win a signed CD from a local artist, a gift certificate from a local restaurant, gift certificate from a local yoga shop or barber shop or whatever. And like I said, there'd be 5 different things in the pack, and it'd be about a $300, $300 value. And the response we got was incredible. Of course, nobody could redeem those until after things started to open up. So right now people are redeeming them. But the whole point was, when we get back online, don't forget about all these small businesses that you love, or you say you love, or you think you love. But if you're not there to show them love, they ain't going to be there. And so that was fantastic because, again, every week we got, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses to that. And, everybody loves to win something. And we moved it around the province. So we did a bunch in the Halifax area, Dartmouth area. And then we did some Cape Breton packs and some North Shore packs and South Shore packs and that kind of thing, right? Just kind of spread the love. It's been mentioned here already, but I'll tell you, I'm not as worried about the breweries. I am much more worried about the customers who buy the beer from the breweries, i.e. the bars and the restaurants and the cafes and this kind of thing, and the festivals too. I mean, this is festival season. I shouldn't be here right now. I should be running around doing a pop-up, for Jazz Fest or Pride or Seaport Beer Fest, which isn't going to happen. And so there's a lot of those groups that need a little bit of love too, right? So that's kind of what we tried to do. I mentioned the marquee sign. Just put a fun saying up, just something to lighten people's state of mind as they drive by. Stuff like that. It really wasn't about selling our latest and greatest beer, which was so wonderful and so different and so unique. It was really more about, think about the other local businesses just have a bigger picture view of what's going on here, and try and keep it light.
Yeah, so out here in BC, I'll just say a couple things and then hand it over to Ken. We have the BC Ale Trail, which Ken already mentioned, and that's our program we've had promoting BC craft beer to locals and tourists alike. So we use that platform to communicate a lot with our consumers through blogs and the brewery profiles, updating their information about deliveries and all the rest of it, and communicating how the government rules were affecting consumers, so that hopefully people were hearing about it and understanding what they could expect when tasting rooms started opening again and when patios started being open and things like that. So hopefully that was effective. We were hoping that the word was getting out that way, and some breweries were doing a good job of doing it themselves. But Ken, maybe you want to talk about the Buy Local. You mentioned that earlier, the Buy Local program that started up.
Yeah, I'll start with, we're fortunate that we have a partnership with Destination British Columbia with the BC Ale Trail, which, there's about 200 breweries out here, and I think it's now over 125 or so are on the BC Ale Trail. It's 18 tours, and that tends to be the consumer-facing piece for us, and then the BC Craft Brewers Guild is the industry facing. So we're able to combine those. So the messaging is the same, and they're linked, and Joe's in charge of content, so he does a really good job of gleaning what we're sending out to our members and then putting it and making it more public facing for us. So that's been really effective. The other program, and everyone's talked about this, these great sales that we all saw in March, but it was panic buying, as you alluded to, Brian, and it was panic buying of more than 24 packs and 30 packs and 1.75 liter bottles of booze, which no craft player plays in. Mm-hmm. So I was having a conversation with Whistler Brewing, Don Gordon, and he was like, how do we, there's all this media about liquor store sales are up 45%, but we're not up 45%. We're not, and we do really well. So what can we do? And they came up with the idea of timetobuyBritishColumbia.ca. And so we talked to the wine industry, the BC craft distillers, the BC craft cooler makers and refreshment beverage guys, and the cider guys. And we worked with the government. So we worked with ABLE, which is the pub association. We worked with BC Restaurant Association. We worked with the BC liquor stores and the rural agency stores, which are 200 plus little stores in small communities. And they kind of bought into the partnership, and we started this program, timetobuyBC.ca. And it got a lot of traction. It got a lot of media off the get-go. And that is exactly to Brian's point. It's not necessarily about just buying alcohol products. It's about supporting the local businesses. And I wrote down, I will be stealing your prize pack idea because we didn't do that. But thank you. So that's really worked. And then the breweries have been really good about doing things on their own. We've got some fairly sophisticated breweries when it comes to social media, and they lead the charge, and then people follow it, which is great. A lot of guys are doing their own kind of live events. There's trivia nights, there's open mic nights that is just a guy playing in an empty room, playing a guitar for 45 minutes. They get amazing amounts of watch. And to Joe's point, we just made sure that when there was big announcements, we often did them in coordination with the other associations, which got the government to repurpose them and re-promote them. But we also encouraged our members to Joe's point of distilling that information on their own level and how it affected their own business. So it's been, I agree totally, Brian. I mean, the proof will be in the pudding. A lot of this is kicking down the road, whether you're on the CERB or you're on these programs. The proof will be in the pudding in the first quarter of next year, maybe the next half of next year. Then we'll be able to really see the effect. But certainly with the amount of information and collaboration I have with the restaurants, they're in dire straits. And we're already seeing it. Numerous big restaurants in Vancouver are closing. Some have been open 25 years. They're iconic restaurants, and they are going down. And a lot of the chains are closing. You see it in retail. So it's going to be a hard go. But I think overall, I think people have made a lot of lemonade out of lemons during this. So that's kind of the West Coast perspective.
So I'm trying to think of where to go from here. I mean, we've talked a bit about some unique marketing approaches, like Brian brought up some examples from Halifax. Do others have any other examples of kind of really unique things that you've done or breweries have done? Does anybody have a story they want to bring up?
So it's funny. I'll talk about it for a little bit, because here's sort of the life cycle of a marketing idea that I've seen, because Jay and I directly were a part of it. And so at the outset of the pandemic, we started something called cellar diving, and which was a Zoom conversation. I call it a Zoom talk show with a bunch of brewers and brewery people. And the idea was, everybody's sitting on old bottles. Now's the time to drink it, because you don't know what's coming next. So the whole idea was like, find something special in your cellar. Let's get on Zoom together. We'll drink it. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about how everybody's doing. And as Jay said, we were sort of commiserating. And we did 4 from mid-April until mid-May. And with each successive one, the interest of being a participant like us rose, and the interest of people watching declined. And so what happened in a very short period of time is everybody started these Zoom events, and I saw Allagash in the States did like Saison Day, and there was this and there was that, and all these notable people were on it. But then I think people just started getting Zoom fatigue. And it's a novel thing that was good at the time and might have a resurgence, but it's kind of interesting how we all kind of jumped in on it. We all started doing this because we had nothing better to do, or we had nothing else to do. But then we kind of also got bored with it, because it really didn't replace what we were truly after, which was being together. So in some ways, the technology allowed us to be together, and the pandemic allowed us to see each other, because everybody was normally always so busy. But it's just kind of funny how it kind of ran out of gas. And then Jay and I, we sort of put a hold on it, and now it's the summer. And we were talking about maybe bringing it back, because it's been a few months. It'd be interesting to see how everybody is again. But it's an interesting time for marketing, because these ideas are, they're easy to execute because of technology, but they also it's hard to sustain over time, as we saw with our beer talk show. So
I'd like to. We're doing something with Destination BC again, and it came out of moving into phase 3. So part of the recovery in October, we're doing a collaborative pack, big world premiere here. Actually, we're doing a collaborative pack. It's one beer, but it's made by 6 breweries, and it's representative of the 6 areas that the tourism industry considers. So it's Northern BC, the interior, the Kootenays, the Fraser Valley, Vancouver area, Lower Mainland, Sea to Sky, and Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island Brewery is hosting it. And we've made a beer called Explore BC IPA. And it's with Haskett berries, blueberries, and all local malts and hops. And it'll be in 50 liquor stores. We had already worked with the government. Usually we're doing our conference in October, and it's BC Craft Beer Month, so we had 50 stores. So we're putting the 6-pack into 50 stores across the province. And that's just to drive, again, this local. It's not just the beer consumer. It's not, hey, we've got a new shiny object you should drink. It's about, you need to get out into your local community and support your local businesses through that lens. And the fact that it's a tourism initiative and an agricultural initiative, we're hoping either the Premier will launch it with us, or at least the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Tourism. So it's something we're continuing. I think we need to continue to roll out programs that are community based and really focus back on that support of not only is it your local distiller, your brewery, your winery, but it's the local bakery, the butcher, the coffee shop guy. Just stay hyper local and do those programs. And so, yeah, we'll see how that rolls out in October, but we're very excited about it moving forward.
And I don't know if we can consider that to be marketing, but I guess it happened in other provinces as well. Breweries teaming up with distilleries to produce hand sanitizers. We were a little surprised. There's a little distillery here in Baie-Saint-Paul, and we just offered them, do you want us to brew you some high gravity beer, because they could not produce enough. And when we called the hospitals around here and we said, do you need some, they said, how much can you produce? We're going to buy the whole thing. So of course, it had some people talking about us and talking about collaboration, and it's I think that was the main point of that was not really to make money out of it, but to show people how different businesses could collaborate, and the response was very good. I heard many other places in Quebec, and I think in other provinces as well, that those kind of things happen.
Well, so we were a little freaked out after about a month and a half into this, and we were looking at all the partial kegs and full kegs that we had, and not knowing how long this was going to go, months, and what the state of that beer would be. With 2 tap rooms, that's a total of 30 draft lines. So each of those has a 50 on it of various stages of somewhere between quarter full and 3/4 full. And then all the backup kegs for that, and then all the kegs that we'd plan to ship out to bars and stuff like that. And everybody had shut down growlers, no growler fills, no growlers going out. And it was just kind of a voluntary thing that we'd sort of done collectively. And right around then, the home delivery aspect was blowing up for us. And it just sort of clicked one day as, a number of years back at a festival that I wasn't allowed to have any glass at, but I was allowed to run a small sort of liquor store component. We had pivoted the last minute, and we'd gone to 2-liter plastic jugs that we would fill on the spot, and we would send out as growlers. And I just realized that, wait a minute, I've got 2.5 pallets of those jugs still sitting up in the racking. And so we advertised through home delivery that we would do these growler fills, and we put them for $1 or $2 off what we normally do a growler fill for. And my God, didn't that blow up? And we were filling dozens and dozens and dozens a day, sending them out. And we managed to blow through all the partial kegs and most of the backup kegs, and actually keep production moving forward and avoid letting people go, because all of a sudden, it's not just packaged. We're actually we have to start kegging. And so, anyways, it was just one of those pivot moments that allowed us to get rid of some old jugs and get rid of a whole pile of really great beer that maybe wouldn't be so great 2 months from now.
You made me think of something. I don't know if you've tried to buy those little canning, four-head canning machines from the United States, but they're like 2 months now delivery, because I think a lot of people reacted as you did, but they said I would say most of the brew pubs that didn't really have any bottling or packaging line, they all decided, the way that I'm going to save my beer is to package it. But between 1 week after the shutdown, I think it raised from 2 weeks delivery to 2 months delivery. We got one. We just got it like a week ago for our brew pub, and it's still in the box. But a lot of people turned on canning their excess supply or beer.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're getting near the end of our time limit here, but one thing people have touched on a little bit that I thought we would quickly talk about maybe before we finish is events, beer events. That was a thing we used to do. You guys remember when we used to do beer events? I've been involved with Victoria Beer Week here and the Big Canadian Beer Festival. We were halfway through Victoria Beer Week when the pandemic hit. We lost our last weekend, so that was a pretty amazing experience to go through that. And now it's amazing to remember that we did that even at one point. So, anyway, what do you guys think the future holds? Are we going to be able to do beer events, beer festivals, that sort of thing anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes, because I like to be positive. Um, but I had 2 of my brewers' backyards canceled because of the pandemic. We had one scheduled for Good Friday, another one scheduled for Victoria Day. And then we had one that is scheduled for Labor Day, but that's not going to happen. But I have been thinking about my last one, which is scheduled for Thanksgiving Day. And I may do it with 100 people, which is what we can do. And I haven't decided yet, but sooner or later, I think there is going to be events that are going to take place within the situation that we're in. So in Ontario, there's a 100-person max for a crowd, and of course there has to be social distancing and all that. But the space that I do my event in is massive. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of square feet. Plenty of space to hold 100 people in a huge space. Now, I don't know how I don't know if I'd make any money, but I guess that's another story for bigger festivals, but that's not me. My fest is, a little bit smaller and a little bit more intimate and local and community focused. And I don't know, I haven't decided, but I think, yeah, I mean, I don't see why, I don't want to think that beer festivals or anything of that sort are just going to come to a complete close. They'll change.
But I think you have a good point there. It's about money. Who's going to be, for larger events, you're wondering how are people going to react? Are they going to come to the festival? Because if you're going to invest thousands of dollars to install all the tents and all the pop-ups and everything, and are you sure you're going to have people coming? That's when will people be ready to be in public again?
I think those fests are gone for the foreseeable future. But I think what we're going to see is festivals or festival ideas that adapt to the current situation, right? So, Ken, you were talking about, or was it Ken or Joe? You're talking about the drinking in the park. There's a natural extension from that to, hey, what if we had a brewery set up a beer tent in the corner of the park? Because now the city has allowed it in those 4 parks. Well, I mean, there's a beer festival that is kind of that could emerge out of that. And is that a bad thing? I don't know. Certainly we don't want to be unsafe, but, we also, we want to be outside, we want to be apart from each other. Where can we do that in large spaces? If I invited Jay and he served at one corner of a 20,000 square foot parking lot with 100 people in it,
at least 2 pandemics away from Ontario allowing drinking in parks.
Parks are going to happen, but
it's just sad.
I think we'll start to see smaller scale stuff. And
I'm actually excited for smaller scale beer festivals where I'm not in a room full of humanity like this. I'm excited for there to be room and maybe sitting. We joked about it today. We have a stout festival at the end of December, and we said, what if we made it a 5-minute beer fest? You could come in and drink all your beer for 5 minutes, and then you had to leave so somebody else could come in and be safe. Like a drive-through festival, but it's a walk-through festival. I think drive-through. You have to be creative. You'll have to adapt. I think the massive outdoor sea of people, I personally won't miss those if they go. They were never kind of fit for me personally or the business, but I think having festivals in smaller spaces over longer times to move people in and out safely is not a bad thing. Parks would be amazing, but I mean, we've had a couple miracles this year already. I don't see that happening. I pitched to the city the idea of letting people buy a little flag that they can take to the park and drink it. So a way for the city if the city can make money off of you drinking in a park, they're more interested in talking about it. But you could buy a little day license to drink in the park for $10.
Well, one of the recommendations in Vancouver was it was going to be sold through concession, which somewhat defeats the purpose because you're supposed to take the beer with you, go to your local brewery, pick it up, and then go to the park. But now you're going to pay $8 or $10 for a glass of beer. No, So yeah, I like your idea though, Kaz, of a smaller festival. We're involved with Cornucopia and Whistler, which is kind of spirits wine, really a wine festival now because of craft beer role in the province. They've allowed us to be part of it. And they do big trade shows and big events, but they actually do a lot of education. And they're still talking about, they want our feedback to know, because we are only 50 people. So festivals out here is a problem at this moment because I don't think you can do it for 50. But they're talking about doing individual classes in the education concept for 50. And they get like, I think the tickets are $55 and you get 6 samples, and everyone goes through, the experts go through the beers or the wines or the spirits, and they run 6 classes a day over the weekend, every weekend in November, like they have. So yeah, it's just about thinking outside the box, which we're good at.
Yep.
You can turn a beer around in 3 days, man. You can do anything.
Brian, what about you? Your festival is happening. Any other ideas about festivals?
Yeah, well, I think anybody who puts on or tries to put on an event of any size this year is going to get beaten up by haters, and rightfully so. As fun as they can be, we're not there yet, and we should not forget the fact that we are still slowly coming out of a pandemic, and this maybe goes back to messaging too, right? Let's not take this thing too lightly. God help us if we all slide backwards into a second, phase of this here. But so I do like the idea of what Cass said. But to his point, how do you even cover your costs with 100 people? There's probably a way to do it. You just have to completely downscale your thinking of what's offered and how you pull it off, and what you pay for versus what people cobble together and make happen. And I think brewers are pretty good at pulling stuff together and making it happen. I know we did for Canada Day. We have quite a big patio at Seaport, so we're lucky in that sense. And we pushed out into the street in 2 different directions, and we just sort of blew up that patio to the maximum capacity with spacing and that we were able to at the time. And we had a jazz band underneath our grain silo playing away, just a 3-person jazz band. 3 guys have been bubbling together for weeks in anticipation of this moment, of this gig. And I don't know who was happier to hear live music, the people sitting there having a beer 6 feet apart from each other, or the 3 guys that have been bubbling for weeks in advance of this. It was just so exciting to have live music happening, outdoors with a beer. It almost seemed normal. But that's kind of the extent of it. So maybe a hot scoop here. As of Friday, we officially canceled Seaport, but we postponed it 2.5 months ago to Thanksgiving. But there's no anticipation that either we would be able to do it, or people would want to come out. Or that we wouldn't completely lose our shirts in the process. And none of those things sound particularly appealing. So it's all about 2021 now.
And Fred, I think you said something already, but I can't remember. Did you have anything to add to this discussion about festivals?
Nope.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll just chip in a little bit myself, because I just wrote an article about the future of beer festivals, and I interviewed a few different people, and the consensus seems to be small scale events, maybe beer dinners, that kind of thing, where you can combine the food and beer with a smaller group, maybe even seated at tables outside, and maybe with table service. But that would be a high priced event. I'm estimating those would be over $100 a ticket to make them work viably, with staff and infrastructure and everything else. So yeah, it's I don't see any large scale events coming down the pipe for a long time yet, and whether the consumer is ready to attend an event is a whole other question. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. And breweries, of course, sending staff too. There's an issue right there. So.
Right.
Well, listen, I think we've had a really good discussion. We've gone for a long time. I think we've come up to our limit on time here, so I'm going to cut it short. But thanks to everybody for participating, and it was, I think, a really, really good discussion. And I think we have lots of ideas percolating and things to think about. So cheers to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.
Guys.
Thank you.